Do you find yourself laughing at the most inappropriate moments? Or maybe you've been told that your sense of humor takes it a bit too far? Well, buckle up because we've got the perfect podcast for you. Introducing the Taking It Too Far podcast. Join the hilarious trio of hosts, Brandon, Adam, and Laura, as they take comedy to outrageous new lows.
Hey there, I'm Brandon, the self-proclaimed leader and an all-around mess of a person.
I'm Adam. I have no responsibilities and I'm just here till I get replaced.
Last but not least, I'm Laura, the butterfly of the group, just trying to keep up.
Tune in every week for your dose of unfiltered humor, guaranteed to make your commute a riot, your chores a giggle fest, and your quiet moments full of, oh no, did they really just say that?
On the Taking It Too Far podcast, we dive headfirst into today's topics, cringe-worthy life experiences, and ridiculous scenarios that go too far. I can't say the word ridiculous.
Don't forget to follow us on social media for episode clips and the occasional live.
This is WWE superstar Drew McIntyre, and you're listening to the WWE Podcast.
The champ is the one that everybody wants, me. Becky Lynch is going to WrestleMania. Claymore. Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass. This is my iron. You're going to acknowledge me.
All right, everybody, it is post-SummerSlam. This is the SummerSlam wrap-up and a bit of a focus on the world title and the undisputed WWE World Championship that Roman Reigns is still carrying, and we'll get to that. And as always, every single Monday, I've got Anthony DeMarco with me. And Anthony, man, I have to ask, overall thoughts and feelings about Saturday night's event?
I thought the wrestling was very, very good. I thought that a lot of the matches that we thought would be very, very good delivered. There are some, I guess, issues I have with the outcomes, but I think the in-ring stuff was excellent as always and as we've been accustomed to in the Triple H era. But I do think that maybe there were some unlofty expectations set by fans and probably you and myself as well. So there were some disappointments in the way that the show ended specifically and just how overall booking decisions came to be. But from an in-ring perspective, as I mentioned, a pay-per-view under the Triple H regime knocks it out of the park in terms of match quality.
Well, let's talk about it then. Let's talk about Roman and Jay and the quality of that matchup, which I thought was very good. And while the pacing was at times almost too slow, I'd rather have that than 100 miles an hour. But at times it felt like it didn't need, as much time as it had gotten. And a lot of near falls. To me, it never felt like during that match, that Jay actually had a chance. Although there were some moments like one of the Uso splashes that you're like, oh, okay, well maybe, and then ultimately it's Jimmy who screws over Jay, and there's a lot of strong feelings on that one. But I'll let you kind of break down this match a little bit.
Well, I mean, it was a typical Roman match, and that's good and bad. I really was hoping that it would just be a one-on-one, no hook or crook match, and it quickly kind of turned into a handicap match with the involvement of Solo Sikoa. I mean, like, the outcome of Roman winning was something I expected. I had thought about Jimmy turning heel on Jay. I think a lot of other people did as well. It's not like a profound thought. I disagree with it in match. I understand why they did it, because now you can set up a 3-4 month long program between the Usos and something that we haven't seen before and take their focus off of Roman Reigns. I just thought that maybe a heel turn could have been done on SmackDown this week or just after SummerSlam. I really felt that it would have been important for Roman to get a clean victory, and obviously in a no disqualification match. I know it's tribal combat, but that's essentially what it was. No disqualification. I just felt that, Roman hasn't won clean per se since WrestleMania 38 against Brock Lesnar, It feels like. And I just felt like given him going against Jay, who, even though he's been built up very well, isn't a true main eventer, has never held a singles championship, I thought that with the stipulation of no disqualification, it could have set up for a lot of ways to protect Jay. I just thought that it would have been best for Jay to lose clean to Roman. And even the tribal combat rules seemingly at the beginning insinuated that no family member can interfere, but they quickly scrapped those plans, although it was always very blurry. But now the whole, I guess, segment of Roman blocking Solo from attacking Jay when they first agreed to this match really kind of makes no sense at this point. So look, I agree with Roman winning for the most part. I just kind of disagree with the way that they went about it. And it is like, look, the ref didn't get knocked out for once in a Roman match, so that's something that should be applauded, I guess, in a way. I just feel like it's a bit tiresome with all the shenanigans that surround a Roman Reigns match.
That's a good point. I was thinking about it while you were talking is, well, when was the last time Roman Reigns actually won clean? And I understand that WWE's logic is strongly that heels have to cheat to win, that they never want to defend their titles, and babyfaces will defend it against anyone at any time, which I really think both of those logics are flawed deeply. It's not that clear cut, but to WWE it seems to be. And with Roman, if you want to, maximize his run here, why wouldn't you want to start making him feel like a dude that doesn't need help? Heels don't always have to need help to win. I understand that it's yeah, exactly. Now, the finish with Logan Paul, bringing back Brass Knucks, I love that. I love Brass Knucks, the old William Regal finish. I loved it. I thought that was again, not to get into that match, but I mean, it was exactly what as advertised, and I enjoyed it. But yeah, this is something that I think they could tweak a little bit, where he doesn't always need help. Like he's on a legendary run. We don't need a cowardice 3-year run to sneak into the discussion here. I think that you can start to make him just a legit badass, and he is, but there is that Achilles heel of him needing help in wonky finishes and ref bumps, as you mentioned. And as far as my thoughts on Jimmy, I mean, again, guys, I know I've done the full review last night, but just to kind of give the Cliff Notes version of it, I think that it was weird. While some people pointed it out and thought it was a possibility, I thought that was out there in the realm of possibility as well. But when it actually happened, I don't think people really knew what to think. I don't know if this is a program people actually want to see, and I equated it to Matt versus Jeff Hardy back in the mid 2000s, and I think Lita was the referee or something like that. It was, and I remember feeling like, do people want to see this? Like, yeah, it's a turn that most people didn't see coming, but I mean, that's a question to you, is like, do you even want to see Jimmy versus Jay?
I mean, I do, but I don't, because the reason why they're doing this, and look, the story writes itself. You know exactly, like, oh, you've been in the spotlight for 3 years, right-hand man, main event Jey Uso, and when I'm on the shelf injured, you use that to punch your ticket to a world championship match, to main event SummerSlam. Like, you already see where this is going. And much like Matt and Jeff, where Matt turned heel because he was in Jeff's shadow. And I believe they even reignited that program that culminated in a match at WrestleMania 25, I think. So they went back to the well on that, a match that Matt actually won, if I'm not mistaken. So you see where this is going, and I understand why they're doing it, because Roman's going to take time off. We're done with the whole Roman versus Jay / the Uso story. And now we're going to find a way, or we're finding a way to keep Jay and Jimmy in the main event scene. Because I guarantee you that on the SmackDown side of things, in Roman's absence, this will be presented as the main event program. That being said, do I want to see it? Like, look, I'm not getting bloodlined out, but I'm just getting, I guess, in like Civil War bloodline out. And it seems like, based on what we just saw at SummerSlam, they planted seeds for Solo versus Roman, and they are 100% going down the path of Jimmy versus Jay. So I'm just like, I don't know how much more, like, anything short of The Rock versus Roman, maybe we could get into that as well, or, the lack of The Rock, that is. I don't know if I really have an appetite for anything more of internal fighting in the bloodline. Like, we've been seeing this essentially since WrestleMania. Like, they've only fought themselves since WrestleMania, and now all signs point to more internal fighting, but now it's breaking down to the Usos against each other and Solo and Roman against each other. And to be honest, I like, if it were up to me, I would have written Jay off of TV for a while. Like, I'm just kind of, I'm exhausted a bit with the Usos. And it doesn't mean I'm over them. I just think that a little time away for both of them would have been good. And then if you wanted to revisit this, maybe in WrestleMania season, you could have. It's just, it feels like, not that I don't want to see it, I just don't think the timing is right, because it just feels a bit too much.
That is how I'm feeling too. For the first time, then I said this last night, for the first time in this bloodline run of 3 years, I looked at this and I said, and I wasn't crapping on this decision or thought it was awful, but for the first time, I didn't look at it and go, wow, that was a great idea. And look, the follow-up will happen. The follow-up will happen Friday. Maybe things turn. We start to feel more invested. But this is the first one where people go, huh? Why is Jimmy doing this? Like, sure, people are shocked, but are people even going to be emotionally invested in this? And like you said, I'm a bit of the Bloodline Civil War burned out than just the story of Roman's run, which I'm still on board for. But I guess what they're trying to do is just squeeze every combination of people fighting that they can out of this magical story that is admittedly something that does not come along often at all, and I don't blame them for it. But now the question turns as we look forward, and after this we'll talk about Finn and Seth, but given our time constraints here, I need to ask, we look forward, Roman is going to certainly take Payback off and probably not compete until October at Fastlane, so there's an additional 2 months as just Roman continues to tack on these months of as we've discussed many times. There's 2 months automatically to his run. And he'll probably be off TV for a little while, you'd imagine. So if Roman is not at Payback, there was no Rock last night or 2 nights ago. So I was a bit surprised by that. I didn't expect it, but I thought it was the highest possibility that we've seen thus far of The Rock coming back. Where do you envision Roman now moving forward? Is it Solo that's his next competitor? Do they move away from that? Is it somebody else? Where the hell Randy is? I mean, there was 0 big returns at SummerSlam, which a lot of people were disappointed by. So where do you see this going in the next few months for Roman anyway?
Well, how many pay-per-views do we have between now and Survivor Series?
2. I believe it's Fastlane in October, and next month is Payback.
So there's no Crown Jewel.
I'll have to look that up while you're talking, but I don't know.
Because I would imagine he would fight at Crown Jewel. Look, I mean, the one thing I want to say about the Usos before I address the Rowan question is that I do agree with you that they're trying to squeeze every last bit out of every combination they have. And I actually think that you could have had Jimmy versus Jay at WrestleMania, because I think that it would have given people enough time to digest everything that they just saw, and then you revisit that maybe in the new year in 2024, and then you build to that. As for Roman, who does he face? I mean, I guess it's Solo, because by all accounts, we're not going to see Roman I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see Roman until October, which is crazy, but that's where it seems to be going. And then maybe he'll pop his head out of the sand. And I would imagine his next title defense, I mean, I want to say his next title defense is going to be at Survivor Series, but we've already heard rumblings on the internet, and I don't know if you've seen them, that they're preparing for a champion versus champion match at Survivor Series of Roman versus Seth, which, I mean, I'm in for, don't get me wrong, but then that means that it's another major pay-per-view where he's not defending the championship. And I'm down to see him versus Seth for sure. Both of them as respective world champions on their respective brands, all the history involved, the unresolved stuff from the Rumble in 2022. But he's not going to defend the WWE Championship at Survivor Series. And I don't know if he's going to defend the title at Payback, or I don't know if he's going to defend the title at Fastlane. So if he doesn't defend it at Payback and Fastlane, and the rumors are to be believed that it's him versus Seth in more or less an exhibition match at Survivor Series, when's the next time he's going to be defending that championship? And when's the next time we're going to see Roman Reigns in a feud with anyone other than a family member? And that's why you said something earlier that I totally agree with, that I'm not over Roman's run as champion. I'm just over this version of it. Just like I was over him feuding with Brock Lesnar from the summer of 2021 until the spring of 2022. But this is something that it just feels is dragging and dragging and dragging. And before you know it, we're going to go through all of 2023, more or less, that he will have defended his championship against no one other than within the bloodline, aside from Kevin Owens at the Rumble. And I'm counting Sami Zayn as a bloodline member because he was. So, like, I it's hard for me to really articulate how I feel because I'm not over Roman. I'm not over him as champion. I think he's really good. Yes, the way his matches are booked are becoming very repetitive, and I would kill to see a Roman match that doesn't involve hanky-panky. Like, I don't know why. Like I mentioned while you were talking, you know, you see Gunther beat Drew clean. It can happen that heels win clean. And I just think we're missing that with Roman Reigns. And I really want to see him face someone other than the Bloodline. Like, we've had this story for 4 months. It's okay. And now you see the way Bobby Lashley's coming back. He looks like he's going to be super over with the crowd with a new faction. You have LA Knight. You still have Sheamus that you've never gotten to. And that's not counting any of the potential returns. But I just named 3 fresh opponents on SmackDown for Roman Reigns that you could book between now and WrestleMania. But based on what we've seen and no seeds being planted for any of those 3, and with him rumored to take time off, and a rumored match with Seth Rollins where no belt is going to be on the line at Survivor Series, it's exhausting me thinking about when's the next time we'll see Roman Reigns in a non... like, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. This is... When you mentioned the non... In basically yet another exhibition match with Seth, yet they have yet to have a true, proper, long-term program, which is mind-boggling. It really does boggle the mind. How have they not let this full fleshed out? And sure, they may have their exhibition and it'll be good and they can pull on their history, but they just kind of dip their toe in and then get back out of the pool. It's like, no, can we get a real program with Seth and Roman? There isn't a guy on the roster currently he has more history with, outside of maybe Brock Lesnar, but even then, there's a more emotional ties to Seth. And I'm not understanding if they just do that exhibition, which means absolutely nothing with no titles on the line, why they would do that and not just get the most out of it, do a big trade. I continue to propose the trade. But it does, you're right. When you look at everything lining up now, time off. You know, if it's solo, fine. But then if it's solo at Survivor Series, then again, it's still intra-family. No one else on SmackDown even acknowledges, pun intended, I guess, that the title exists or that there is a world title on SmackDown. Everyone just is blind and doing their own thing. It is a bit frustrating. And again, it sounds like I'm complaining, just like you, but I'm not. It's just that this needs to evolve outside the bubble of the bloodline family issues. It needs to go outside, and I understand Solo's going to be a big star. I get it, but there are still other guys and that you can work with, and of course the returns that we mentioned. That's why Roman Reigns as a run right now still has so much left that he could do, and that's why I think that outside of that bubble of the bloodline is where a lot of that kind of fresh feeling will come. Because if it's Solo, it's like, all right, well, that's cool. People want to see Solo versus Roman. Can Roman actually beat Solo? All that, but then where does Jimmy lie? And Jimmy, then it's weird. It gets weird again. I want the family the hell out of this and have Roman actually have a real, true, proper opponent over a couple of months. And it doesn't look like, by the way, I don't see any Crown Jewel event. That could change, but as of right now, I don't see anything. It's Payback, Fastlane, Survivor Series, so that's the lineup. But I'll let you have any closing comments here because I do want to talk about Seth and Finn, but I'll let you have the floor.
Yeah, I don't want to dump on this because I really do like the Bloodline, and I think the storytelling's great, and all of their chemistry with each other is second to none. And I do think that all these are separate matches that I would eventually like to see. Like, I do, you asked me before, would I want to see Jay and Jimmy? I do, just not now. Do I want to see Roman and Solo? Probably, just not now. And it's like, eventually, I mean, we told the story of the Civil War. It blasted into smithereens. It seems like we're gonna have a sub-Civil War now, but like eventually, like here's the thing: is like we on SmackDown we saw Lashley debut basically like the Hurt Business 2.0, which I think is really badass. I think it's a great rebranding for the Street Profits. And the first thing in my head was just like, could you imagine these three against the Bloodline? But now we can't see that. Like, I almost would have rathered after Jimmy turned on Jay, like all of them, like the four members of the Bloodline in the ring at SummerSlam, just all like agree, like Jay falls back in line, just because I would be like, okay, it's over, whatever, kind of predictable and all this, but at least we know the Civil War stuff is over and we can move on to a non-Bloodline opponent for Roman Reigns. But the fact that, like, and I get that they're always trying to tell a story and further a story, but it almost feels like the storytelling they're doing with the Bloodline, it's like they're going too far just to say that they're telling more of a story. Like, I can't believe I'm saying that because I felt like under Vince McMahon, they overtly wouldn't do good storytelling and they would just care about the payoff. But it just feels like with the Bloodline stuff, and I know that Paul Heyman and Roman Reigns, easy enough for me to say, are very involved in booking it and writing it. So I understand that they have a vested interest. It just feels like maybe going down a simpler path and having Jay and Jimmy fall in line. Like maybe Jimmy would have been like, we just had to fall in line and we're stronger when we're together and whatever. But it just felt like maybe simpler would have been better for this time, just for this time.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something that, hey, maybe we'll be much more interested come Friday when they have something that Jimmy says that you're like, okay, fine, this makes sense, let's go. But yeah, I mean, the Jimmy turn, even when I look at it, I'm like, well, Jimmy's the one that actually turned on Roman to begin with, and now he's the one bringing him back. Anyway, that's a whole nother conversation. But all right, well, let's talk about Seth and Finn, a matchup that I thought was very good. A lot of people, including you and I, thought that Finn had a very good chance to win, and I think we both predicted Finn to win, I believe. And there's an argument to be made that he should have won, and they didn't go that road. They went the Damian Priest and Finn slow burn, about to explode though, road where we had the briefcase get thrown into the ring. Seth uses it inadvertently, we assume. It was supposed to be for Finn to use on Seth, but Seth ends up capitalizing and stomps Finn's skull off the briefcase and gets the victory. And that's the way Seth retains. So what did you think about the match and where you think they're going now with the world title?
You know what? I actually liked it. I thought that I predicted Finn to win. I thought it would be better for storytelling for Finn to win. And I do think, and I still maintain this, that this was probably your last kick at the can with Finn Balor as a credible world champion in a lot of ways. So, I mean, it's a sacrifice they felt was needed. But, I mean, they did a hell of a lot of storytelling here. And to be honest, after the match was done and I was looking at Finn and I was looking at Damian, I was saying to myself, like, you know what? Damian feels like more of a main eventer than Finn, and I think it was the right decision. And I still do think there's a lot more tread left on the tire of Seth Rollins as world heavyweight champion, and they could string this out a bit. And there's good storytelling that's going to be told with Damian and Finn Balor for sure. I mean, Damian Priest to me is a star in the making. He looks the part. I think he is the part. And Finn Balor kind of just came off, and this was probably their intention, kind of just came off as like an entitled, weaselly leader, if you will, and subconsciously knowing that in some ways his understudy is surpassing him in terms of legitimacy. So the fact that I was able to take that away from the match made me say that, hey, you know what? I was wrong. Seth holding on to the championship was the right call. And I do think they really have something with Damian Priest. I don't know why, but the stare he gave Seth Rollins and Finn Balor after the match, just that look he gave made me think like this guy, when he becomes world champion, is going to really do special things.
That look, it was the most deadpan just look, but it told such a story. I don't know where that came from, but it was a burning image in my mind. I'm like, whoa, like without saying a word, what the hell is going on here? And I don't dislike this decision either, even though I was wrong. That's, to me, it's fine, because there is still a lot you could do with Seth, and especially if you're trying to get Seth versus Roman for an exhibition match at Survivor Series and all that, you're looking ahead. Then you can do that, but because you don't want a heel versus a heel Roman, and I get that. But the matchup I thought was really good. I could watch these two, every other pay-per-view. If they just kind of wanted to have like an annual feud that, they have 5-6 matches a year, I could do it. They're so damn good together. They brought back the 2016 injury of having Finn try to do that to Seth, and I figured they would do that, where they kind of do that same spot, except this time someone's shoulder's not torn off their body. But it was well executed. Having, of course, Dom get involved. I think he got stomped on the outside. Rhea getting involved, the usual suspects. But then it's furthering Finn versus Damian. And sure, having Finn as champion, looking over his shoulder with Damian, over there saying, I'm not going to cash in on you, man. I'm not going to cash in on you. Eventually knowing Damian's going to cash in on Finn would have been a fun story. And also having them being able to claim that they are all holding gold would have been a lot of fun. And I think that, sure, that's a story that they absolutely could have told, and no one would have been sad about it. But I think when it comes down to it is that they look at this and say, well, Seth hasn't had a full-fledged run yet. It's still, kind of in its infancy, or more like its teen years. Like we just getting going here. And I think that they look at Seth as a longer-term champion, maybe at least 6 months before they start to talk about Seth losing it. And overall, again, good storytelling. You really can't go wrong here. Like, just because I was wrong about the pick doesn't mean that it's not the right pick. You really couldn't have gone wrong with either way, because there's a good story to be told with both. I really have no complaints.
No, I don't either. And it's, I guess what they're going for here with Finn, I do kind of feel bad for like the actual person. I don't know his real name, but the actual man, because it feels like his character is best used to kind of just shoving himself in a position that he doesn't belong in, like trying to recreate history and rewrite his story. Not to rip off Cody Rhodes, but he's trying to like rewrite history and be like, no, I was supposed to be a main eventer and I deserve this world championship run. But in the end, time has passed you by, man, and it's Damian's time now. And that's the story that I think they're telling. And to me, I'll eat my words. I thought the best story would be having Finn hold the world title and having Finn, be the leader of the Judgment Day, which I suppose by de facto he kind of has been positioned as for the last 14, 15 months, and having every Judgment Day member hold some form of gold, or in Damian Priest's case, the briefcase. But lo and behold, they told the different story, and I think the storytelling was perfect. And to be honest, I wonder where the Judgment Day is going to go from here. I wonder if they oust Damian Priest. I wonder if they oust Finn Balor. Like, for you, do you think one of them get ousted? And if so, which one is it?
I think Finn turns babyface. I mean, what's going to happen is Finn is going to get... I think he's going to be attacked by the entire Judgment Day. Maybe Priest, bludgeons him with the briefcase. I don't know if it'll happen right. What happens tonight. I mean, I don't know what happened on Raw yet. Maybe it gets drawn out several weeks and happens at Payback, or they pull the trigger tonight, or they draw it out even further. I'm not sure, but either way, this is going to result in Finn Balor being the babyface and having Damian Priest be the heel. That just seems to be the natural way to go, as people have a lot of respect for Finn. He's very likable. You forgot how good he is on a promo for many months at a time where he doesn't get to talk. He's just got that just inherent likability about him. So Yeah, Damian versus Finn is going to be something that happens, and maybe Damian puts his briefcase on the line or something like that. I don't know, but that's where they're going. Is probably in the next couple of months, leading out to Fastlane.
And do you think? Well, where do you think Seth Rollins goes with the World Heavyweight Championship? Because we look at the Raw roster, like there hasn't really been a heel positioned in a main event capacity since before the draft, because this stuff with Finn and Seth has been going on essentially since WrestleMania and subsequently the draft. So like, where do you think this leads for Seth? Because we know he's going to be the fighting champion and he's going to main event probably Fastlane and Payback before presumably getting to Roman at Survivor Series. Like, what do you think is in store for Seth Rollins in the world title between now and Survivor Series?
Well, I would say Dominic Mysterio. I really wish he would become world champion. Obviously, they went a different road and put the NXT North American title on him, which is fine. I would actually say, I think given that Cody Rhodes is now freed up from Brock Lesnar, and presumably for the time being, Seth and Finn are complete as Finn moves his focus to Damian. And Cody also confronted Seth before Brock Lesnar attacked him again a month or two ago, that Cody's going to continue to try to pursue Seth's championship. And maybe that's what happens. Maybe it is Cody versus Seth. Perhaps. I think that's one possibility, or they keep those two separate because they are arguably the top two baby faces on Raw. So, looking at the rest of the roster, Riddle doesn't make sense. Ricochet is a babyface. You don't want him. Braun Strowman, maybe. Braun Strowman has been MIA. I would imagine he's injured, so I haven't heard much about him. But Gunther's got the IC title. I don't know. That's really kind of it, unless it's like a fatal or a triple threat. Maybe Seth does, stay in the Judgment Day's crosshairs, and they have a triple threat, even though he's the Money in the Bank briefcase holder. That's also a possibility. But other than that, I don't see any other guy on the roster, pending a massive return, of course, on the roster that would make sense for Seth to face off of against in the next couple of months.
The only thing I thought about, and I thought that this was going to happen after Seth won the World Heavyweight Championship at, I believe it was Night of Champions against AJ Styles in Saudi Arabia, that he won it.
Yep.
And I thought that his first opponent would be a heel Drew McIntyre. They went the Finn road. I thought it was an excellent decision. His feud with the Judgment Day has been awesome. But I don't know if you caught this, but after Drew lost clean to Gunther, they just showed a clip of him like marching up the ramp, up the aisleway, whatever you want to call it. And I just thought to myself, like, maybe this is the straw that breaks the camel's back in the babyface version of Drew McIntyre. Like, we're 3.5 years into him winning the Rumble, which is effectively when he turned babyface in January of 2020. And I don't know if he's going to continue this feud with Gunther. Like I mentioned when we spoke last Thursday in the preview show, I wouldn't be opposed to him eventually dethroning Gunther, even though I thought that SummerSlam wasn't the right time to do it. But I wonder, like, are they maybe going to go down a path of Drew turning heel, and that he's finally snapped. He can't sit idly by anymore. Hasn't held the championship since the winter of 2021 when The Miz cashed in on him. And I'm just thinking to myself, would a heel Drew McIntyre be a good opponent for Seth Rollins?
Oh, hell yeah. I think Drew needs, and again, anytime you come back from a return, whether you're heel or babyface, people embrace you, but eventually they get bored with you again. It's just human nature. So I think a good way to refresh Drew is to turn him heel. As you mentioned, it has been several years pre-pandemic before or since Drew McIntyre has been a heel, and he's a good heel. I know he could play a very good heel. He is a polished wrestler. He understands the business. He's got great in-ring psychology. He can cut good promos. He's legit badass. Like, he checks all the boxes to not just be a good babyface, but a really good heel. And it also would give Seth another guy to work with that is a legitimate threat to his world title, not just one of the stepping stones of, well, it'll be a fun match, but Seth will win. No, I think Drew turning heel and facing Seth would be a very real threat to Seth's world championship. Absolutely. But like you said, does that, I think that, here's the thing. I will say, I think that happens. Yes, I do think that happens. But I don't know of the timing of it, because perhaps Gunther and Drew stretch this out one more, because don't forget, this pay-per-view that's coming up is called Payback, and that would insinuate that whatever happened at the previous event, that Payback is coming. And not that every match on the card has to fit that, but for some of the high-level ones, it would make sense. So I think it happens probably shortly after Payback, maybe leading into Fastlane, or Survivor Series if they don't do Roman and Seth. So I think that's happening for Drew. Before 2023 is over, we'll see a heel Drew McIntyre against Seth Rollins.
And they had a very underwhelming program in the early stages of the pandemic era, if I'm not mistaken. And it just feels like a program we never really got to see. Obviously, back then it was a babyface Drew and a heel Seth Rollins, so it would be reversed. But I mean, just quickly, I'm kind of thinking about it. Do you feel like the SmackDown roster, not in terms of star power, but just like the mid card and the depth, is much stronger than the Raw roster?
Well, I mean, it depends. Like, you take Roman Reigns out of it, and for all intents and purposes of how frequently he's there, the roster, it's difficult, because when you add the world title to Raw, that's really helped, and it's made the guys chasing it feel more important because they have a top title to chase. But now that things are, I guess, as equal as they've been in a while, when I look at the SmackDown card, or the SmackDown roster, you have a kind of an amoeba of Bobby Lashley, who's been heel, babyface, with the Hurt Business, not with the Hurt Business. He's been all over the damn place, and now he's got this new group. Bobby Lashley's been all over, but I still like what he's doing, and I think he's a real opponent for Roman Reigns whenever they want to go down that road. I think ultimately, though, SmackDown does have the more, I guess better is a subjective term, but it's a more star-studded roster, I think. I mean, you have Edge, wherever the hell he's going these days. You have AJ Styles. You have Jey Uso, Jimmy Uso, Roman Reigns, so of course, Solo Sikoa. You have a rising LA Knight, and we didn't even talk about him, but maybe that's another conversation. LA Knight is, a star, a mega star, truly in the making right now. You have Shotzi with her new haircut. She feels fresh. You have Rey Mysterio. Oh, he's injured right now. I mean, I think really when you look at this right now, SmackDown's probably the bigger star, I guess more exciting roster than Raw. Yes.
Well, I was just thinking about it because you also have Austin Theory, who's been lost in no man's land. They're returning Bobby Lashley, as you mentioned. Sheamus, who's just like a really good utility guy. And I think he did an interview where he said he felt underutilized, which I would concur with. You could have Sheamus, even if it was babyface versus babyface, feud with Seth Rollins. And then buried at the bottom of the food chain is AJ Styles, feuding with Karrion Kross. And Karrion Kross is about as stale as you can get, but I still actually think there's something there with him. I really do think there's a lot of untapped potential. It's just about finding him a meaning. And I just find that there's not good chemistry with him and AJ, and I don't care that much. But just AJ, and to a much lesser extent Karrion Kross, being buried at the bottom of the SmackDown roster kind of tells you all you need to know. Because for me, I guess you have Sammy and Kevin on Raw, but they're tagging right now, so that kind of takes them out of the single scene. And then you even have a guy like Santos Escobar. So I mean, I just think there are some guys on SmackDown that, if they were on Raw, could put themselves into that mix with Seth Rollins. And I just think that maybe overall right now there's a lack of heels. And I guess it's so weird, Bobby Lashley returning now as a heel, presumably based on what the Street Profits did. It almost feels like he would be the perfect guy to feud with Seth Rollins, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, absolutely. If they could make that happen, yeah. But with Bobby Lashley and Seth Rollins, on separate brands, it's a little difficult again, unless they do some kind of trade, but or they just have people come over, because that happens every now and then now, where people just come over and no one cares, and the whole draft rules and imaginary ones anyway. So they could still make it happen, even if there's no trade. They can still, I mean, really, because they have told us that it doesn't really matter, and that we can just kind of pop people over whenever we feel like, and you're not going to care because you're getting the best match possible, and people are blinded by that. So that's still a possibility. For all intents and purposes, they have a brand split, but they don't when they don't want one. So, that Bobby Lashley would be it'd be an excellent opponent for Seth Rollins right now. All right. Well, I guess I'll end things here. We could go on and on about SummerSlam, and there's so much we didn't even talk about with the brilliant MMA rules match with Shayna and Ronda. That was just overwhelming with the crowd reaction and all that. But I'll pause, and I'll just give you the floor for anything that we didn't talk about, maybe that you wanted to quickly mention.
I guess we could briefly touch on. There's so many things. I just wanted to say one thing. I guess, you know what? LA Knight. All I would say is that maybe this is the beginning of a major push for him. Obviously, for all intents and purposes, it's a meaningless battle royal that is just for bragging rights. But there were some decent names in there. Sheamus, AJ Styles. I liked, oh my God, I almost said Brodus Clay. Bronson Reed. I liked him.
Funkasaurus.
The Funkasaurus in that match. Karrion Kross. I mean, maybe I'm one of the few, but I do think there's something there with him, even though he is boring as all hell right now in a lot of ways. But I do think that maybe this is the start of something with LA Knight. But now that I'm really thinking about it, is it not absurd that Austin Theory wasn't on the pay-per-view?
About as absurd as the fact that, first of all, yes, because they did so much in the last couple of years to build up the U.S. title with the absence of the world title on Raw, which, it only got built up simply because something else wasn't there. But they still did a nice job, and all the equity that they built up in the U.S. title, it wasn't on SmackDown, or it wasn't on SummerSlam. It is a bit of an abomination, yes. Not necessarily that Austin Theory wasn't on it, but the U.S. title, more importantly, wasn't showcased on SummerSlam. Yes, it was ridiculous. But also, you didn't have Trish and Trish and Becky Lynch. How does that program not make it? Certain things, and I know that, time constraints, this and that. How about you substitute out Ronda and Shayna for Becky and Trish? That's a hell of a better story, and yet, I don't know. I digress.
Yeah, I think overall it was a good show. I guess the one thing, well, I could say a bunch of one things. I guess the lack of returns somewhat surprised me. Not saying that I was expecting Voldemort, but I just thought that maybe we would get one return, but at the same time, we can't always expect a return. But no Bray Wyatt, no Randy Orton. I was kind of surprised by that.
Yeah, I thought at least one of the 3, 4 that we mentioned would come back, and I think that took away because people were waiting. I feel like there was that kind of underwhelming, or that kind of groundswell of people like, okay, who's coming back? Where's the big return? And the biggest thing coming out of that is, Jimmy Uso signing with Roman now. That's the biggest item, arguably, that you could come up with. Again, I know returns don't necessarily make or break an event, but I feel like it's been a while since we've seen a big return. It feels like it's been, I don't know. It feels like it's been months since we've had that shocking, oh my God, so-and-so's back. And we keep waiting for Randy. Where's Randy? Where's Randy? Oh, he's coming back. You hear doctor's reports. And then 10 minutes later, you'll say, oh, well, no, doctors say, that they told him never wrestle again. And then we're like, well, Randy still wants to wrestle. It's like, what is going on? So Randy Orton is still floating out there. But yeah, the no returns, it was a disappointment. I'm not going to lie. I was a bit disappointed there were no returns. But overall, solid event. I don't think it was their best event of the year. Crowds certainly didn't match what we saw overseas the last few months. But yeah.
Yeah, overall a good show, and there are specifically on Monday Night Raw, but even on SmackDown, I'm really interested to see where I'm just going to call them the Hurt Business 2.0, But I mean, I'm really interested to see what happens on SmackDown with Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits, LA Knight. And on Monday Night Raw, really interested to see what happens with the World Heavyweight Championship and what direction they take it.
Agreed. Yeah, and like you said with LA Knight, man, this is the beginning of something. I hope they finally gave the fans something to sink their teeth into, and I hope it continues. And boy, they couldn't have given a more just basic foundational victory. I mean, that you talk about starting from the bottom, winning a battle royal, and then the promo video for the battle royal included just Royal Rumble footage. It was like, no, that's not a battle royal. Right, like 50% of that footage was Royal Rumbles, not Battle Royals, but I digress. So, all right, well, I know that this week you'll be returning with a new retro. Last week we take breaks on our PLE weeks, but I don't know if you want to give us any sneak peek, or maybe you're not sure yet of what you're going to talk about this week.
Yeah, I'm really not sure because I sometimes review angles. I sometimes review pay-per-views, so I'm bouncing a few things around right now. I have a couple irons in the fire, but I'm not going to reveal that just yet.
Cool. All right. Well, looking forward to it, and thanks so much for coming on. It'll be, like I said, very interested to see what's going to be happening over the next couple of months, because we can already, sounds insane, but I think we can already kind of start taking a peek at WrestleMania. A lot of times storylines go from SummerSlam to Mania. We've seen it several times over the last 5 years or so. So I don't know. It sounds crazy, but I think we can start looking over the horizon and start booking a little bit. So.
It's crazy that it's going to be WrestleMania season right around the corner, isn't it?
I know it is. And hey, WWE already has, from what I understand, their top 4 or 5 matches already booked out. So we'll have to decode it and figure it out. But all right. Well, thanks so much for coming on, and we'll be chatting in a week or so.
Yeah, man. Looking forward to it.
All right. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the WWE Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a show, or head to WWEpodcast.com. And for all of these shows ad-free, head over to patreon.com/WWE Podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.